I never thought I'd be sharing my story with the world, but here I am, typing away, hoping that someone out there understands. Maybe my story will serve as a cautionary tale, or maybe it'll just make me feel better to finally get it all out. Either way, here's how I went from a successful career woman to being the talk of my small town and why the world can't stop watching. From a young age, I knew I wanted to work in politics. I grew up admiring women like Kamala Harris and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, strong figures who represented change and hope for women like me. I worked hard through school, got into a top university, and landed my dream job right out of college. For someone like me, who came from a working-class family, it felt like I had hit the jackpot. I was making waves, networking with politicians, and even got the chance to work on high-profile campaigns. Everything seemed to be lining up perfectly. But then, just as my career was starting to take off, everything changed. My mom was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. The doctors were vague, but the prognosis wasn't good. She needed constant care, and my father, who had always been a strong man, was crumbling under the pressure. My younger brother was still in college, and I was the only one in the family with the stability and the means to help. I made the difficult decision to step back from my career and move back home. At first, I thought I could balance it all working remotely while caring for my mom. But as her condition worsened, it became clear that wasn't an option. I took a leave of absence, hoping it would only be temporary. It wasn't. Months passed, and as much as I loved my job, I loved my family more. I resigned from my position, telling myself I'd get back into politics one day when things were better. Life at home was hard. Watching my mom deteriorate was the most painful experience of my life. I tried to be strong for my family, but there were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd ever get my old life back. My friends from the city drifted away, too busy with their own lives to keep in touch. My relationship with my long-term boyfriend, who was still living in our apartment 3 hours away, started to feel strained. He'd call, but the conversations became shorter and more awkward. I could feel him slipping away. Then came the day that would change everything. My mom had been in and out of the hospital, and it seemed like things were finally stabilizing. My dad was getting stronger too, and my brother had graduated and moved back home to help. I was finally starting to think about returning to my old life, maybe even reaching out to my old boss to see if there was a chance I could rejoin the team. And then, one night, I overheard a conversation between my father and brother that shattered me. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when I heard them talking in hushed voices in the living room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the tension in their voices caught my attention. "Are we really going to keep this from her?" my brother asked, his voice shaky. "We have to," my father replied. "She sacrificed everything. She doesn't need to know that it was all for nothing." I froze. What did he mean, for nothing? My heart pounded as I crept closer, staying just out of sight, listening to every word. "She thinks she gave up her career to save Mom," my father continued, "but the treatments, they didn't work. The doctors told me months ago that there was nothing more they could do." I nearly dropped the plate I was holding. I stood there, my mind racing, trying to process what I'd just heard. My mom was dying, and they hadn't told me. I had quit my job, abandoned everything I had worked for, and for what? To sit here, thinking I was helping, when all the while there was no hope. I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. How could they keep something like this from me? How could they let me give up everything, knowing the outcome wouldn't change? That night, I confronted them. My father tried to explain that they didn't want to burden me with the truth, that they thought it would be easier for me if I believed there was hope. My brother just sat there, silent, unable to meet my eyes. I felt like I didn't even know these people anymore. The weeks that followed were a blur. My mom passed away shortly after, and I barely had time to grieve before everything else started to unravel. My boyfriend, who had been distant for months, finally broke up with me. He said the long distance wasn't working, but I knew it was more than that. He couldn't handle the weight of everything I was going through, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. But the worst betrayal was yet to come. After my mom's funeral, I decided to go through her things, hoping to find some comfort in the memories. That's when I stumbled upon a stack of medical bills I had never seen before. As I went through them, my heart sank. My family had been hiding more than just my mom's prognosis. They had been struggling financially for months, drowning in debt from her treatments. The money I had been sending home to help with household expenses hadn't been going to pay the bills, it had been going to pay off their debt. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All this time, I had thought I was doing the right thing, sacrificing my career to help my family. But in reality, I had been enabling them to keep secrets from me, to keep me in the dark about what was really going on. I confronted my father again, this time with the bills in hand. He broke down, admitting that he didn't know how to tell me the truth. He said he didn't want me to feel like I had wasted my life, that he wanted me to believe I was making a difference. But all I could feel was anger and resentment. I had given up everything for them, and they had lied to me in return. After that, I knew I couldn't stay in that house any longer. I packed my bags and moved back to the city, crashing on a friend's couch until I could get back on my feet. It wasn't easy. Finding a new job in politics after being out of the game for over a year was a challenge. But slowly, I started to rebuild my life. One night, after a particularly rough day, I decided to post my story online, just as a way to vent. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but within hours, my post had gone viral. People from all over the world were reaching out to me, sharing their own stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and family drama. My story was being shared on social media, covered in news outlets, and even trending on TikTok. Suddenly, I was thrust into the spotlight in a way I had never imagined. At first, the attention was overwhelming. I wasn't used to having so many people know about my personal life, and some of the comments were brutal. People were calling me selfish for abandoning my family, while others accused me of using my mom's death for attention. But the overwhelming majority were supportive, telling me that my story had touched them in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old friends from high school, college classmates, even colleagues from my old job reached out to express their sympathy or share their own stories of struggle. I hadn't realized how many people were going through similar situations, feeling torn between their careers and their families, grappling with the emotional weight of caregiving, and facing the harsh realities of financial strain. A few weeks after my story went viral, I was contacted by a producer from a popular news program. They wanted to interview me for a segment on the growing pressures facing millennials who are caught between caring for aging parents and trying to build their own lives. At first, I hesitated. Did I really want to put myself out there even more? But then I thought about all the people who had reached out to me, telling me how much my story had helped them feel less alone. Maybe this was an opportunity to make a difference. The interview was nerve-wracking, but it went better than I expected. The host was kind, and the questions were thoughtful, focusing on the emotional toll of caregiving and the societal pressures we face. After the segment aired, I received even more messages of support. It was surreal, seeing my life play out in front of millions of people. But the more I shared, the more I realized that my story was bigger than me. It was about a generation of people who are being asked to do more with less time, less money, less support. As the media attention grew, so did the opportunities. I was invited to speak on panels, to write guest columns for major publications, and even to consult with advocacy groups focused on healthcare and family caregiving. It was strange, but in some ways, I had found a new career path, way to combine my passion for politics with my personal experience in a way that felt meaningful. But not everyone was happy about my newfound fame. My father, who had been following the media coverage from afar, called me one night in tears. He said he didn't recognize the woman I had become, that he was hurt by the way I had portrayed our family. He accused me of airing our dirty laundry for the world to see, and I could hear the pain in his voice. It was a difficult conversation. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, that I was just telling my side of the story. But he didn't see it that way. To him, I had betrayed the family, just as they had betrayed me. We hung up without resolving anything, and I haven't spoken to him since. That's the hardest part of all of this. As much as sharing my story has helped me heal, it has also created new wounds. My relationship with my family is strained, maybe irreparably so. And while I've found a sense of purpose in my advocacy work, I can't help but wonder what my life would have been like if things had gone differently, if I had stayed in politics, if I had known the truth from the beginning, if I had been able to hold on to my old life. In the end, I'm not sure if sharing my story has made things better or worse. I still have moments where I feel lost, wondering if I'll ever fully recover from everything that's happened. But at least now, I know I'm not alone. And maybe that's enough for now. So, that's my story. It's messy and complicated, and I'm still figuring out how to move forward. But I'm sharing it in the hopes that someone out there will read it and feel a little less alone, just like I did when I read the stories of others who had been through the same thing. Life doesn't always turn out the way you expect, but sometimes, telling the truth is the first step towards healing. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for me right now.